Welcome to A Moment in Time with Nex. Today we are reviewing this book, Stolen Focus: Why You Can't Pay Attention and How to Think Deeply Again by Johann. I gave this book 5 stars. I always love Johann's books. I've loved every book I've read by them so far. Lost Connections, Chasing the Scream, and now Stolen Focus. Really, really powerful journalism, really powerful information. And I think this in particular, really all of them, but this one especially, is so relevant to us in the modern day. So I'm recording this in 2026. By the time you're seeing it, it's probably only gotten more enhanced and more exaggerated, the amount of time that we're spending on screens. And I'll get into the breakdown of everything that he talks about throughout the book. But just as one really profound takeaway that I've had from this book, and if you take nothing else, start doing this right away. Start taking at least an hour offline, off screens, every single day. Yesterday, during my hour offline and off screens, I found $2,300 just sitting there waiting for me to discover it. Basically, it was in my mail. I was tidying up around the house. I started going through my mail, and there was $2,300 just sitting in some mail that I had been procrastinating opening, forgetting about, avoiding, and just staying addicted to these screens, staying on screens all the time. And when I finally took that hour to take care of things I'd been procrastinating, I found a bunch of free money, and it literally brought me to my knees and really humbled me and reminded me of the importance of prioritizing things in the real world. I got a lot done around the house, more than I would have even thought possible in 1 hour prior to this. You know, sometimes we can procrastinate things because we make them into these mountains. We think, oh, this is going to take so long. This is so much work. And meanwhile, we can clean most of the house in 1 hour. You know, we can accomplish a lot in just 1 hour. It really kind of reminded me. Not every single hour is wildly productive. Half the time I come off screens, I end up falling asleep because I'm like burnt out and exhausted and not getting a good healthy amount of sleep. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's not get into all that just yet. But let me just talk about something else that happens to me during these hours. I feel uniquely human. It's like this hour takes me off of the screens and it helps me to reintegrate back into the embodied, present, grounded human experience. It brings me back into the real world, if you will. And I think all of you probably need this. And 1 hour might not seem like a lot, but it's amazing. Like just in the first 5 minutes yesterday off of my phone, I had an instinct and a desire to grab my phone 2 or 3 times in the first 5 minutes. I think it was 3 times, because once I settled down and was off all the stimulation, I started thinking, and I was like, oh yeah, I have to do this. Oh yeah, I have to do this. I have to do this. And immediately was going for the phone. I got to message this person, got to check to see if they responded on this, got to check these messages, you know, and I didn't do it because I was on that hour off. But it's amazing how just being off of it for a few minutes, I immediately just have this desire to go grab it again. Same thing for looking things up and thinking for ourselves when we want ideas, when we want to figure out a plan. Oftentimes we just go to our phones, go to our screens for this. And again, I'm digressing, so let me take a pause here because I want to break it down and cover all of the subjects in the order that the author covers them. So let's get into it. I learned an incredibly powerful concept from this book that I haven't stopped preaching about since, called surveillance capitalism. And this is the combination of what we know to be capitalism, supply and demand, and surveillance, more of the surveillance state, this idea of Big Brother is always watching. We're obviously moving more and more towards that reality all the time, this reality that was spoken about in this dystopian kind of way in the book 1984. We're living that now. There's a whole reality TV show about it called Big Brother. That show's been on for 20 plus years, and we're still moving steady ahead towards what we think we should be being warned against. But what is really the alternative? I think there's so much power to video and this idea of surveillance. Everything is video documented. There's no more one person's side of the story or the others. We can literally just watch the video and decide for ourselves. And the idea of surveillance capitalism in the hands of companies that monetize this and benefit from this, it's really more a matter of data and having our data and our ideas. So let's go back to 2002. This is where we start, in the classroom of Professor B.J. Fogg. Actually, one of the Instagram creators took this class, and this professor went on to be known as the Millionaire Maker. And the course was on the psychology of mind control. There was a student who took the class who also dabbled in magic tricks in his free time as a hobby, and this is how he put it. It really woke up the magic part of me. I was like, oh wow, there really are these invisible rules that govern what people do. And if there are rules that govern what people do, that's power. That's like Isaac Newton discovering the laws of physics. It felt like somebody showing me the code of how you can influence people. I remember the experience of sitting there in the graduate area of campus, reading those books over the weekends and underlining furiously these passages and just being like, oh my God, I can't even believe that works. He was so intoxicated by the excitement of it that he said, quote, "I'll admit, I don't think the ethical bells were firing in my brain yet." So I already mentioned the Millionaire Maker thing, but that's in this passage here. The class was filled with people who were going to use the techniques BJ taught to change how we live our lives, and BJ was dubbed the Millionaire Maker. But something was starting to nag at Tristan, our magician student. After a while, he noticed he had become obsessed with checking his email. He would do it repetitively, mindlessly, again and again, and he felt his attention span was beginning to atrophy. He realized, he told me, that the email app he was using, quote, operates on a bunch of different levers, and it's very powerful, and it sucks, and it's super stressful, and it ruins hours and hours of people's lives. He had learned at Stanford and elsewhere how to use technology to change people's behavior, but he came to ask a disconcerting question. Am I somehow being hacked by other tech designers myself? Professor B.J. Fogg asked this question in one of his classes. What if, in the future, you had a profile of every single person on Earth? As a designer, you would track all the information they offer up on social media and build a detailed profile of them. It's not just the simple stuff, their gender or age, their interests. It would be something deeper. This would be a psychological profile, figuring out how their personality works and the best ways to persuade them. It would know if the user was an optimist or pessimist, if they were open to new experiences, or they were prone to nostalgia. It would figure out dozens of characteristics they have. Think, the class wondered out loud, about how you could target people if you knew this much about them. Think about how you could change them. When a politician or a company wants to persuade you, they could pay a social media company to perfectly target their message just for you. It was the birth of an idea, one that would be picked up in Silicon Valley later by different people far removed from BJ and his warnings about ethics. Years later, when it was revealed that the campaign for Donald Trump had paid a company named Cambridge Analytica to do exactly that, Tristan would think of that final class discussion at Stanford. Quote, "This was the class that freaked me out," he told me. "I remember saying, this is horribly concerning." One thing that they use to keep us prisoner to our devices is notifications. So I urge you right now, pause this video and go turn them off. Turn off all the notifications you can. If you can put your phone on silent, at least put all the notifications of all the apps that you don't need, turn them off, or you can change them to batch style. So I have an iPhone. I know how to do this. I made a video about it on my social media. If you have an Android, you can do this as well. Just go into your settings, modify your notifications. You can do it per app, and you can also see how many notifications you're currently getting from those apps, and you might be really shocked and surprised. It can be really overwhelming. It's amazing how many times these things are pinging you for your attention throughout the day you might not even realize. So change it at least to be a batch, so you get all the notifications just once per day, like a newspaper that has all the news condensed into one place. You can read that newspaper and get all the information you need, which is so much more palatable, digestible, so much more reasonable and realistic for us to comprehend that much information than to just nonstop have this obnoxious intruder whose only point is to distract and interrupt you. They don't have your best interest at heart here or at mind. Take back some semblance of control right now. Interruptions and distractions make it so much more difficult to complete any task. At this point, we don't even need to pay a company directly for them to make a lot of money off of us. Our data, our time, our attention, our energy, all of this is being used by the ultra wealthy to become even wealthier. For instance, Mark Zuckerberg, worth $180 billion, mostly in Facebook stock. Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the creators of Google. Sergey is worth $235 billion. Larry Page, $250 billion. Facebook itself is valued at $1.3 trillion. And Alphabet, aka Google, $3.3 trillion. So the author Johann, he gives us 12 different reasons as to why he thinks that we are losing our ability to focus and think deeply. So let's get into that. Number one, we have an increase in speed, switching, and filtering. More things can get into more brains via our eyes and ears, etc., than ever before, and all the time it's increasing. So in addition to that, not only do we have so much more information than we've ever had, we're spending less time on any one thing than we used to. There's so much demand for our attention that we're exhausting our attention resources, oftentimes on things that don't even deserve our attention. That's one of the biggest points here, is that it's pulling our attention from more important things. Our physical health, our mental health gets neglected. Our relationships, one of the most important parts of the human experience, gets neglected. Our hobbies, our skill development, our personal development, our awareness, our compassion, our patience, our tolerance, etc. All the things that require depth, attention, reflection, presence, creativity are being replaced with time spent on our devices. The second reason that he gives is the crippling of our flow states. Now, I have a whole nother review on the book Flow that talks about the idea and concept of flow, so I'll just suffice it to say that everything I've previously mentioned in this video also impedes our ability to enter and sustain flow states. And flow states are crucial to performance and fulfillment. Personally, I've been noticing a lot more depressed people lately. I don't know if it's the economy, the war, the weather, but I can tell you that being under a dangerous oligarchy of surveillance capitalism definitely can't be helping us. Number three, the rise of physical and mental exhaustion. I started mentioning this earlier. Electricity in general started to mess with our sleep schedules, and now the highly addictive nature of our devices, our games, the dating apps, whatever it is, like everything is built to be super addictive and try to just keep you on the app or the site or the program, whatever it is now. They have all sorts of different ways they program things now, but the idea is they want you using it. If they can prove that they can hold your attention on there, they can sell that space to advertisers, which is the primary way that they monetize these things, but certainly not the only way. Way too many of us are not getting enough sleep or rest, and it's time to prioritize that. Silence your devices. Prioritize your rest. We're so wired, we're so burnt out. It's time to prioritize rest. Something that should be so simple, but is exceedingly difficult when we are addicted to something that impedes our rest. Number 4 is the collapse of sustained reading. With so much information at our fingertips, we've become skimmers. We're skimming through, trying to find the important bits. We're rushing through. We feel like we have to get to the next thing. And now very little time is spent reading a book on one subject in continuity. And focus can be trained and honed like anything else. So maybe today during your hour offline, wink, wink, maybe you want to practice some sustained reading and see how that goes. And notice maybe some of your tendency to want to rush ahead or get to the point because we know how much information there is. We're trying to be as efficient as we can and weed out all the unnecessary stuff. And this makes it difficult for us to be able to sustain our attention and read through something that gets heavy or boring or dense, whatever it may be. So I encourage you to try some reading on physical paper, okay, not on an iPad, but actual book. Just like this book here, you can see how well loved it is. It's kind of roughed up from all the folding I've done as I've been reading it. So that's what I want your books to look like too, okay? I mean, how many hours, in minutes, hours, days, and even years have we spent on pointless internet brain rot rabbit holes? For what? You could have been spending that time reading a book that actually taught you something useful. Number 5, the disruption of mind wandering. I noticed an almost immediate improvement and increase in my creativity and problem-solving abilities as I was reading this book and becoming more avoidant toward my phone. I was becoming more aware of my own usage, the usage of the people around me, and as I was coming off of my phone, I realized having that downtime, this mind-wandering time, is so important because this is the time that we reflect on the information. So the information that we got, when we allow our minds to wander because we're walking around on the beach or we're just sitting quietly at the airport waiting for our plane rather than being on the screens and we're just letting our minds wander and think on their own, we start to draw connections between different pieces of information that we know. We start to compare them to each other, reflect, come up with new ideas, combine things into new concepts. And all of this it's almost like the opposite of focus because it's a more passive thing. It's not an intentional thing that you're doing. You're trying to, let me make some connections. It just happens naturally. It's like this mental digestion. If you're a meditator, you know what I'm talking about because you experience this a lot of the times when you meditate, most likely, if you've been meditating for a while now, at least. So the mind wandering passive action of the mind is the opposite of focus, but it's just as important. The focus is important for getting the information, and then the mind wandering and the passive thinking time, the reflection, the random thoughts, connecting with each other, that's the time that you kind of integrate the information. And so it's just as important as focus. Number 6 is the rise of technology that can track and manipulate you. This is surveillance capitalism, and it's much bigger of a problem than us simply talking about it and taking an hour offline per day here and there. Number 7 is the rise of cruel optimism, and this ties into the reality that us as individuals are simply not powerful enough on our own to get a handle on this. We are bordering on victims of this situation. We are almost powerless to fight against it and fight back. Most people don't know about this. So many people are just so spread thin between raising their children, working their jobs, managing their relationships, their finances, etc. They're not learning about surveillance capitalism in their free time and taking an intentional hour offline to meditate and move their body and clean their house. There's so many other things that are vying for their attention all the time. And you have this rise of cruel optimism, which puts all the onus on the end user and says, well, why don't you just put your phone down? And we all know, especially once you start trying to take these hours off, you'll start to realize, holy crap. I'm way more addicted to this than I ever realized. And it's so much bigger. Big, large scale systemic changes need to occur, probably governmentally and with regulatory bodies. Technology is changing so fast all the time. I mean, there's only so much we can do to try to fight against it. We really need large scale, big change, systemic change to truly combat this. So make sure that you're keeping an eye out for legislation. Keep an eye on the news here and there, kind of know what's going on so that you can at least vote with your votes or even with your dollars to support companies and technologies that you feel have the right values and are maybe working against this surveillance capitalism shift that we're experiencing that I think is really dangerous and pretty scary, honestly. Down with the oligarchy. All right, number 8. A surge in stress and how it's triggering vigilance. So this ties into so many different things in our life. Stress is a killer. We need to meditate. We need to exercise. We need to take deep breaths. There's so many things that we can learn about combating stress. He's just tying in that this is another thing, and the technology and the devices don't help. They make us more stressed. They give us more stimulus. They overwhelm our nervous systems. They don't give us time for rest and downtime and integration and reflection. So they don't help. There's a lot of other things causing stress too, environmental pollutants. And, you know, he talks about this too, like, what about something like global warming, climate change? Let's just say pollution, right? We all know pollution's happening, whether you're a climate change denier or whatever. Let's say you know that pollution occurs, right? Sometimes companies pollute a lake or a river or an airspace or some groundwater. And what do we do about this? Well, if we're too addicted to our phones to even notice what's happening, we're not going to go out, we're not going to protest, we're not going to put pressure. We might not even notice that it's happening because we're just in these crazy bubbles that start to look like the movie Idiocracy, and we need to snap out of it. Again, it's not all on us, but as much as we can, we should try to fight back, because there's a lot more of us than there are of the people who run these companies. So we should always remember that we have the power in our numbers, and we just have to stay awake and unplugged from the matrix as much as we can to try to stay useful and valuable to the other humans in this society. Not this society, but the human organism in the whole world. Because if we can't pay attention to what's important, what's going on outside, it might be too late by the time we unplug. We might be unplugging because there's, you know, a blackout, and all of a sudden it's a little bit late to start fighting back. It's never too late, but the sooner we wake up and start spreading these ideas and start focusing on prioritizing our own health, the better we can do moving forward. I also wanted to talk about how traumatizing some of the stuff we see on the internet can be. How many of us are getting repeatedly traumatized by things online? I know there's a lot of people that get into true crime and, you know, police investigations and 911 calls and all these things. I used to go down those rabbit holes myself, and that creates even more trauma that you have to process for yourself, because humans were just never meant to experience the trauma of all the other billions of people on this planet and figure out what to do with all of that. So martial arts, talk therapy, and massage are all really cool ways to help process trauma and work through trauma, whether it's your own or others. Again, it's martial arts, talk therapy, and massage. These things can help. Getting off the devices should help too. Number 9, deteriorating diets. This probably isn't news to anyone. Do your best. Eat as healthy as you can. Whole foods, organic. Those are my preferences. I'm a vegan. Mostly, I occasionally dabble in animal products, unfortunately. But, you know, just do your best. Try to keep yourself healthy, right? This is what kind of the trend here in this section of the book. Number 10, I got ahead of myself, is pollution, rising pollutants and pollution. So I already really covered that. Number 11 is a rise in ADHD and our response to it. Something like 6% of Americans are currently prescribed stimulant drugs for ADHD. Over 3 million of our children aged 3 to 17 are currently prescribed stimulants for ADHD. It's 6 out of every 100. It's actually not as high as I thought, but it's still a decently high number. If you drove down the highway today, you easily drove past 100 other cars, and 6 of them were potentially on stimulants. And that's just kind of a strange thought. It's not, like I said, as high of the population as I thought it was going to be, but it is an interesting way to treat something because we have this culture that's, I think, obviously causing things like inability to focus. What I've heard is that there's a rise in ADHD symptoms that seems pretty connected with a rise in technology and screens and surveillance capitalism. So instead of dealing with any of that, instead of incorporating time offline, meditation, exercise, even when you go to your doctor nowadays, rarely are they like, oh, improve your lifestyle. They're like, here's a medication, here's a pill for it, just keep doing what you're doing, here's this pill, it'll make everything okay. It's kind of the same thing here with ADHD. It's like, instead of working on meditation, which is clinically proven to improve focus, take some stimulants, developing brain, you child. Here you go, stimulants, so that you can, and this is actually, I will get into number 12 while I'm here. Number 12 is the confinement of children physically and psychologically. Our whole society is too sedentary and it's having devastating consequences. So we tell these kids they got to sit still, they got to focus, they got to pass these tests, these standardized tests. And if they can't do that because they're kids and they have energy and they want to run around and move, or they have different types of intelligence, such as physical intelligence or musical intelligence, and they're fidgeting because that's what they're geared towards and that's what they should be doing, prescribing them stimulants just feels like a wild leap and something that should be much more slowly adopted. It seems like we should be trying everything else first, but in this fast-paced world of go, 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 who has time to start meditating with their children? You might as well just give them a pill, right? It's the kind of crazy world that we're living in right now. I'm not trying to judge anyone whose kids are on stimulants or you being on stimulants. I have a close friend who's been on stimulants for about 6 months, and from where I sit, seems to be kind of fundamentally changing her personality. She used to be a very laid back artistic type, and now she'll send me walls of text that are a bit manic and a bit they give the energy of a person who's on an amphetamine. And it's something that I believe she takes every day. So that's just her personality now. A person who's on amphetamines, like super hyped up, a little bit paranoid, a little bit like superiority vibes. And that's normal for stimulants. There's nothing wrong with my friend. That's a normal reaction and response to stimulants. But I feel like I'm losing my friend to it a little bit. So I have some personal skin in the game and personal bias here. Don't stop taking your medications. If you're currently prescribed anything, I'm no doctor, I'm no pharmacist, psychiatrist, anything like that. Always consult your medical professionals. It's not going to be surprising to them if someone doesn't want to take medications. They come across that a lot. Chat with them. Maybe you can get a different dosage or a different medication, or you can talk with your doctors about meditation. What do they think about that? Do they think that that might be a helpful thing for you to try? I don't know why they don't suggest that to people more. Probably because in the Western world, the doctors aren't meditating either. They're probably on just as many medications as anybody else, and they have easy access to it. So it's so normalized in their world. Why wouldn't it end up starting to be normalized in our world? The easy fix is always, the path of least resistance is always going to have that allure. And we have to look at the big picture and zoom out and say, okay, well, this might help me focus right here and right now, but is it going to harm my relationships in my future? Am I going to be able to stop taking this at some point if I want to, or does it have its own addictive natures and properties? There's so much to consider. I thought this book was really great. I do sometimes feel like with the Johann's books, like sometimes we kind of start one place and then we end somewhere different than what I was expecting. We went into he went into global warming and things more than I was expecting in a book about what I thought was mostly about screens, but he wanted to say, hey, there's other things that are causing problems with focus too. But my takeaway is it's predominantly right now imperative for us to get off of our devices, get off of our screens, get off of the internet as much as we can. Good luck to you. Let me know how it goes. This has been A Moment in Time with Nex. I hope you enjoyed this review of Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. Stay tuned for the next book review coming. I'm actually reading a couple books right now, so I don't know what's the next one's going to be, but I'm thinking probably The Money School by Nicole Lapin. Check her out and check out my book review coming soon. Subscribe. Become a supporter. What do they call it on YouTube? I don't know. If you want to support, you can do it on here somehow or through my website. Okay, thanks. Love you. Bye. Exprimidium, squeeze the day.